Did you know that the health of your gut could be the reason you feel bloated, tired, or even stressed? What if I told you healing your gut could literally transform your life and that it's easier than you think? Today, I'm interviewing Maggie Gallagher, a functional dietitian, to uncover the secrets to better digestion, balanced hormones, and a way to fall in love with your food again. If you've ever wondered why gut health is so important and how to actually improve it, this is the episode for you. Welcome to another episode of Wellness from Scratch. I'm your host, Marissa Jackson. Thanks for being here with me today. This is a place where we dive in to practical tools and inspirational conversations to help you become the best version of yourself. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so I can continue making amazing content like this where we learn about well-being. Let's take a minute to talk about why the food we eat is so important and how it can truly shape the way we experience our lives. Now, I want to start by saying I do want to acknowledge that not everybody has the means or the access to be able to have fresh or ideal foods. And that's okay. This is not about perfection. This is about doing what you can with what you have where you're at in life right now. My whole channel is about not being perfect, so I'm definitely not perfect. The truth is, food isn't just fuel for our bodies. What we eat impacts everything. Our energy levels, our mood, our focus, and even how we connect to the world around us. Think about those days when you ate things that were truly nourishing for your body. Maybe it was a home-cooked meal with wholesome ingredients. You probably felt more energized, clear-headed, and just, better. I know I always feel better when I am eating whole fruits and vegetables, meats, and things like that versus if I'm buying or eating things that are really processed. Now, compare that to the days when you've had heavily processed foods or maybe skipped a meal altogether. Now let's talk about how the food we eat can shape the way we experience life. Now, I want to start by saying everyone's relationship with food is different, and that's okay. For some people, skipping a meal or taking part in a practice like intermittent fasting might be a part of their typical routine, while other people like a more structured eating schedule because it just works better. The key is to find what works for your lifestyle and your body. That being said, food is definitely more than something that just fills you up. It's a source of energy, nourishment, and even joy. The types of nutrients we put into our body play a major role in how we feel each day. Eating well can help us maintain a steady energy, focus better, and support things like digestion and mental clarity. It really is amazing how much food influences how we show up in the world. When we incorporate better food options into our diet, like whole, unprocessed foods, like fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, it can set us up to feel our best. These choices don't have to be drastic, and they definitely don't have to be perfect. It's all about small, intentional changes and essentially changing the habits. Small, intentional changes make the biggest difference over time, and I can personally agree with that. Like, I've seen so much change just by implementing the smallest daily practices. Like drinking more water, like having the water on my desk, having the notepad, which is up here today. Those little things really push you to continue the habit because you make it easier for yourself. And there's no point in biting off more than you can chew and then just failing because that doesn't motivate you to continue. That just reinforces all the negative talk you give to yourself saying, it's no wonder this failed because it's me, when it's not you, it's the system. Let's be real. Life gets busy and not every meal is gonna look picture perfect. And that's totally fine. It doesn't have to. It's about creating a balance that works for you and taking small actionable steps towards it. I mean, you could literally just swap out a bag of chips or something processed that you would have eaten with like an apple or anything. Even swapping out one thing for a fresh fruit or vegetable can make a difference. I know for me personally, I keep all my fruits and vegetables in the door of my refrigerator. And I know what you're thinking, but, I have ADHD. And if it goes into the bottom drawer, I'm going to forget about it. So it's best to have it right in my line of sight so I can just grab and go. And it's that type of just small little behavior that has helped me to succeed in what I was doing. Because if I wanted to eat those fresh fruits and vegetables more often like I do, and I just keep putting them into the bottom, then I'm gonna forget and I'm gonna blame myself when I don't need to be blaming myself because it's not my fault. So just putting them in the door is one way you can help yourself succeed, if that makes sense. Anyway, at the end of the day, the food that we eat will build the foundation for the life that we want to live. It doesn't dictate our happiness, but it can give us the energy, the focus, and the strength to truly go after what matters. Whether it's spending time with loved ones, working on your goals, or just feeling good in your own skin. Whether it's spending time with loved ones, focusing on your goals, or just feeling good in your own skin. Every step counts, and it's not about being perfect. It's about doing what's best for you. Now that we've laid the foundation for how food can truly impact our lives, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Maggie Gallagher. Maggie is a registered dietitian with a deep passion for helping women heal their digestive systems and build positive relationships with food. She is the founder of Savor and Restore Nutrition, where she helps women address issues like digestive discomfort, inflammation, and hormone imbalances. What I love about Maggie's approach is how she combines her expertise with actionable steps that you could take today. Whether you're struggling with your gut health, wondering how to love food again, or you just want to learn more about how to feel your best, this conversation is going to be packed with valuable insights. Now, without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Maggie. Can you share your journey to becoming a registered dietitian and how your approach has evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I grew up in a really healthy household and I was very thankful for that. It was just something my mom always prioritized, like just making sure that we ate more whole foods. And, I'm really thankful for that because then I moved on to college and I started to realize this is a science. This isn't just we throw around all these health terms, what does eating healthy even mean? And so I majored in kinesiology and I learned so much about health and the human body and, how every single cell is responding to what you're eating. And so I pursued the path that's required to become a registered dietitian. And I think it's an important distinction to make is that a dietitian is not the same as a nutritionist. A dietitian has to go through a bachelor's degree through an accredited program, so we all take the exact same courses, all the same science courses. You have to receive a master's degree. You have to then get accepted into an accredited internship program, which is 1,200 plus hours of supervised training. And you have to pass a national exam by the Commission of Dietetics Registration. So you pass that, you get licensed, and then you have to continue to it's required of you to do continuing education. So a nutritionist there is no education or training required. They can't work in a clinical setting and the coursework is just inconsistent and unregulated. So I think that's just an important distinction to make because most people use those two terms synonymously. So I became a dietitian and I started to have some hospital jobs. And when you're first out of school, you're like, this is great. I have responsibility. Amazing. And then I started to realize everyone's sick and the quality of care that you're getting is pretty poor. And so one of my first jobs, I was working in a long-term care facility, and I actually worked on the side in a wellness clinic, which was run by a naturopathic doctor. And that's really where I was introduced to this whole holistic world. And I did some additional coursework with them to learn more of the science behind functional medicine, but I really learned so much just through hands-on training with them. I worked there for several years and learned so much about how when we actually view the whole person, we sit down, we get to know them, we understand what their baseline is, we learn more about their health history, we ask questions about them, we heal them from the inside out, we view the body as this spider web of interconnected parts. That's when we actually see healing happen. And so since then, I've really considered myself a functional dietitian.
I totally agree that the foods you eat contribute to how your health is. The food is gonna either poison you or make you healthy. Why gut health such an essential essential part of overall wellness?
I could give a really long response for this, but I'll keep it short. So Hippocrates has, the saying, all disease starts in the gut. This is a famous quote, and this is something, we're all kind of quoting in the functional world. And it's true because first and foremost, it's where most of our nutrients are absorbed. When I say nutrients, I mean our vitamins and minerals. It's home to 70 to 80% of our immune system. It's where 90% of your serotonin is made. Imbalances in the gut can lead to chronic inflammation in the entire body. Gut health is really so intertwined with the balance of our hormones. So big picture, that is why truly everything starts in the gut. Like if you are having issues with anything, we need to look at the balance of your microbiome.
I totally agree with that. Like they say, I've heard, I'm no expert in anything like this, but like they say, the gut is it is essentially like the first brain because it's actually sending signals to your brain, so it's happening there, and then the brain is reading it, then giving the rest of you signals as well. So that's so cool. What are some common signs that someone might need to improve their gut?
So I'll start with some of the obvious ones, and those are more like the stereotypical GI symptoms, which are things like bloating, constipation and diarrhea, or stomach pain. The symptoms that people don't think about that are linked to our gut are things like issues with our skin, eczema, acne, issues with our mental health like anxiety or depression, seeing things like chronic infections, and really if you've been diagnosed with any type of hormonal imbalance are all really stemming back to the gut. That's going to be like the root of a good chunk of it.
What are some simple steps that people can take to start improving their digestive health today?
Yeah, so I'll give you just 3 quick and basic ones. Number 1 is slow down when you are eating. Chew your food thoroughly. Ideally, it's to an applesauce-like consistency, and try not to be distracted during meals. So put the screens away, all of that, like actually be present with your food. Number 2 is meet your fiber needs for the day. So women need roughly 25 grams of fiber, men need 38 grams of fiber. And number 3 is diversify your plant intake. So I think the key here is think variety over quantity. So each plant we eat is feeding a different strain in the microbiome. And so you don't have to have mass quantities of each plant. You just want to get in that variety. 5 plants a day would be ideal. We want 20 to 30 different types of plants a week. So keeping that in mind, you always want to be having different plants. You meet with, I meet with patients all the time who are like, I usually just buy apples and bananas every week. I'm like, you got to change it up. We got to find other stuff that you like.
That is my husband. Okay,
Yeah.
We're getting bananas, apples. I got my fruit for the week. And, I always try to diversify. Oh, let's get some bok choy or, other things. That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does what we eat impact our digestion and our energy levels on a daily basis?
So it's a really complex interaction, but essentially, what we eat is impacting digestion because all of the whole foods have what we need in them. That's where our nutrients, our fiber, our antioxidants are coming from, whereas processed foods are going to be adding more inflammation to the gut. So on a very simple level, that's why we encourage a whole food diet. We tend to see a lot of imbalances in the gut when we have primarily processed foods because it's feeding this bad bacteria in our gut, those pathogenic bacteria. And plants are feeding, the commensal bacteria, and the plants ultimately fight disease. And on an energy level, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and that's so what we eat quite literally affects us on a cellular level, affects every single cell, and that's where most of our energy is being produced. So the quality of your diet is the quality of your energy.
That is amazing knowledge. What are some easy, budget-friendly foods that support gut health?
I love this one. So I'll give you 5 quick ones that are cheap and easy and usually readily available in almost any generic grocery store. Number 1 is beans. You can get those canned for about 99 cents. Number 2 is seasonal fruits and veggies. A lot of people say like, oh, this produce is expensive. It's not if it's in season. They have an abundance of it. So know what your seasonal fruits and veggies are, and don't discount canned and frozen fruits and veggies as well. Then we have oats. Oats are a great one. These are a great prebiotic and are usually cheap and easy, and they're shelf stable. Garlic and onions are, always cheap and easy to get. And I would say brown rice would be a good one. All the foods I just listed are a source of either fiber or they are a pro or prebiotic. So they benefit our gut. Most of them are shelf stable and they are just cheap and easy to get.
Those are amazing and really accessible foods that anybody can get. I love those answers. Awesome. How important is hydration for digestion? And what's the best way to stay hydrated?
Hydration is critical for digestion. So when you think about it, like 70 to 80% of our body is water, and a huge part of that is pushing food matter through the GI tract. So quite literally, water and gravity are what's pulling everything through. So I always tell everyone, it's not just enough to meet your fiber needs. You need to drink water as well. Fiber is the bulking agent and water pushes that food mass through the GI tract. Staying hydrated can come from a variety of things. I think a lot of people need a real visual reminder. Keep a water bottle in sight with you at all times. Keep it by your computer, carry it with you, take it with you on walks. I think people also don't realize that all liquid except for alcohol counts towards your overall fluid intake. So if you're having tea, if you're having a seltzer, like that all counts. So it doesn't have to just be plain water. Something I also encourage people to do is to take a tea bag and steep it in cold water. There's a lot of sweeter teas, hibiscus flavored, Tazo is a great brand. Sweeter berry-based teas that have a lot of antioxidants that are just great flavor enhancers to your water. Citrus is a great flavor enhancer. And even making things like mocktails, coconut water with citrus and pomegranate seeds. And these are all very flavorful, but also nutrient rich. So don't think you have to just drink plain water. Flavor it with something more natural and keep that visual reminder present.
That's amazing. I have actually not really thought about diversifying like the things I drink. That is amazing because I do keep my water bottle on the desk all the time so that I can drink it. That is such a great idea. What advice would you give to someone who feels overwhelmed by all the information about eating healthy? There are so many diets nowadays and people, I think they get confused, especially being in the digital era. We get overloaded with information.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's a blessing and a curse to have so much information accessible. But number one is look for credentials. Like, don't just believe something that you hear. Look and know. So that kind of goes back to when I'm like giving you the difference between what a dietitian and a nutritionist is. Training matters. This time spent in the field matters. So look for credentials, know what those credentials mean, and stop trying to piece together information. I find this more so with my gut health patients. If you have a real issue, if you are seeing chronic symptoms that just aren't going away, don't try to piece together free information you see online. Find a provider you trust and invest in them to give you the quality advice that you need. In general, I would say just get offline. Like, don't necessarily get your information from, you have to remember that it's not illegal to spread false information, and health and nutrition is a science. So the person you're getting advice from needs to understand how to read and interpret the scientific literature. So, and even just stop following. I always tell my patients, unfollow, block, don't have these people that are throwing conflicting information out there on your feed all the time because it really just riles you up. And, anything that screams a fad diet, or anytime someone tells you cut out a food group, or, just unfollow. You have to remember that your plan needs to be personalized. So generic advice won't necessarily work for you.
How can people build healthier relationships with food, especially if they've struggled around guilt and eating?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it's a complex issue, and I think number one is address some of those underlying emotions and challenge them. Not every thought you have is true, and starting there. And sometimes it's getting additional support and understanding where are these coming from and how can we change that thought loop. I think too, a big one is what I work on with patients is change the language you use around food. Stop allowing yourself to use terms like good, bad, clean, I'm on my diet. These terms are not scientific. They're created by diet culture to fuel guilt, to keep you following a certain program that wasn't going to work for you in the first place. And so check yourself there with the language you're using. I mean, I think expressing gratitude is always a good place to start as well, is changing that thought loop again, and prioritizing nourishment over perfection. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for what makes us feel good. So it's switching what you're prioritizing and what you're looking for to get from eating in general.
Absolutely. I think people are trying so hard to be perfect nowadays, and it's okay to take a step back and just focus on nourishing yourself and taking away the labels from things, because it's like a potato isn't bad, it's just a potato.
Exactly. Food is just food. Exactly. And we moralize it. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I've definitely been guilty of that a time or two. What are some small but impactful changes people can make to enjoy their meals more and reduce stress while they're eating?
Yeah, I think one is to take, I recommend this a lot, is take 4 really deep breaths when you sit down and just implement some of those grounding techniques. Like I said, I think gratitude is a huge one. If you know where your next meal is coming from, like, you're really lucky. So just, again, gratitude is a grounding technique. And remember, how the 5 senses as well is something you hear, something you smell, something you see. All of these grounding techniques can be really good ways to just calm your nervous system. You don't want to go into a meal in fight or flight mode.
Absolutely. That's such good information. What does learning to love food again mean to you? And do you help others achieve that?
Yeah, a big part of what I do with patients is implementing the principles of intuitive eating. So I think so much of us from childhood start to unlearn how to listen to our bodies and those cues. So to me, learning to love food again is you're not viewing food as an agent to change your body. You're embracing it as the fuel in the experience that it is. There's memories tied to it. It's cultural, it's familial. So it's getting more out of it than just viewing it, in a way to manipulate something else, to change your body. It's an experience, and it's ultimately our fuel.
What made you decide to start your company, Savor and Restore Nutrition?
Yeah, I have worked in so many different facilities and even in different private practices, and you just want to have a say in what exactly the patient gets. And I've learned so much, and there's not a wrong way to do it, but I've picked up bits and pieces from all these other providers, and I've realized, like, ooh, we could combine this. Like, I want to maximize the patient experience, and ultimately I want to also be able to change things, as my company, things will change. I want to have creative input. So ultimately it's just feeling like I'm in control of the patient experience.
Absolutely. And you want to be able to guide that through time and grow with the world. That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. And then can you walk us through the main goals of your Savor and Restore Blueprint program?
Yeah, so this is a 3-month program where you get one-on-one attention, and ultimately it's helping women manage or heal their IBS symptoms and rediscovering the joy of eating again. So there's 3 main kind of staples to this. One is it's really root cause healing. So I'm taking you through the 5 steps of functional healing for the gut. And this includes, the 5 steps are remove, replace, reestablish, repair, and rebalance. So that's on the gut health side of things. The next is you're really learning the foundations of nutrition. It's not enough to just heal your gut. We need to figure out, how do you fuel yourself? What works for you? What does the research tell us about eating? And the third is identifying where diet culture exists in your thought process and learning to implement intuitive eating. So big picture, it's root cause healing for the gut, it's learning the foundations of nutrition, and it's identifying, really learning how to implement intuitive eating. Those 3 things are what I find help people actually maintain the goals that we set in the long term, and it's what leads to actual healing and remission of those symptoms.
Right. It's not about having a diet to lose 20 pounds. It's about changing your habits, changing your mind, changing your lifestyle, and the way you view food. That's how you have success.
Yeah, and I think the difference is that is what functional medicine is. It's the bigger picture. We're not just treating the symptom. We're understanding what caused the symptom. Where is your relationship with food in all of this? Do you know how to feed yourself? What foods make you feel good, and how to balance a plate? So I think that's where it's like really giving you the tools that then you can reapply in the future. If you become a perpetual patient, like I haven't done my job.
Right, because you're teaching people the skills to go into their lives in order to make the right choices, because the reason people come to you is because they don't know which are the right choices to make.
Right.
Totally. What is the most common feedback you receive from people who complete your program?
I think I always work with patients where it's a mutual connection. I think that's so important, is that you connect and trust the provider you're working with. So I get feedback in the sense of people enjoyed working with me, but I also think that what's important is that they say, like, I didn't realize that, like, I thought I'd have to do like drastic things to change this. And it was actually a bunch of like a series of small tweaks. And that's, like, it shouldn't be anything drastic. So I think that's another big one, is they were like, I kind of thought I'd have to turn my life upside down, and you made it really doable and manageable. And that's the goal. It's not to set you up for failure. It's to set small short-term goals each week that we chip away at and make sure that they're things you can sustain in the long term.
That is beautiful. And what literally, like, that is like my mantra that I put in all my shorts almost. It's like it's not about it's not about doing this big, huge gesture. It's about small, repetitive, or, just consistent action. And it makes such a big difference. It really does.
It makes the most difference.
Absolutely. What inspired the name Savor and Restore, and how does it reflect in the work you do?
So the name Savor and Restore Nutrition came to me because it's quite literally what we're doing together. We are savoring every bite, savoring the food that you love, and we're restoring ultimate balance to your gut health. So I thought the two words together were great, and they are, positive words around healing, but we are quite literally savoring and restoring your relationship with food and your gut health.
What role does consistency play in achieving better digestive health?
I work with so many people who, I think in general, so many of us have this all or nothing mentality. And what you don't realize is doing something big once in a while versus something really small, but every single day makes way more of a difference. Especially for digestion, I think the thing to keep in mind is your microbiome looks different and changes every single day, quite literally minute to minute, hour to hour. So doing those small things every day, it is worth it. Think of it as like instant gratification. Small things that you don't necessarily see a huge difference are working, internally to keep you healthy ultimately. And sometimes it's also just the lack of disease. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm not really like noticing anything, but then they're like, well, I haven't gotten sick in like 6 months either. So, it's things like that where it's also prevention is something that we don't necessarily look for, but it's like, if you're not having problems, then that's always a good sign too. Like you're doing something right. And so small incremental movement or habits, this is where like what I do a lot with patients is habit forming, is like, we have to get in the habit of doing this every day. And even if it's smaller than what's ideal, it's still worth doing.
What's one thing you wish everyone knew about taking care of their digestive system?
I think what people don't realize is it's a huge predictor of how often you get sick. And even how often you see things like infections, chronic respiratory infections, chronic strep throat. I see this a lot, and I think people don't realize that it's stemming from the gut. How often you get a cold. This is all stemming from the gut, and that's why you should care, because obviously how often we get sick impacts the quality of life, our financials. So I think that's one thing, is like, it has a huge impact on our immune system. Like I had said, 70 to 80% of your immune system is located in your gut. So the quality of your immune health and how frequently you get sick tells us the balance of your microbiome.
Wow, 70 to 80%. That I did not know that. That is wow. That's like almost all of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge amount.
Yeah. Can you share a favorite success story from your work that highlights the power of nutrition in transforming someone's gut health? Do you have like a story of someone you've worked with that's like a really profound case or anything like that?
Yeah. So a woman had come to me, she was really defeated, and she's like, I've like tried it all. Like, I'm not really sure that, I'll be shocked if you tell me something that actually changes my situation. She had horrible constipation and a lot of bloating and a lot of frequent illness, again, which are all, I'm like, okay, something's going on in the gut. She had this for like 40 plus years. So I was like, okay, this is like more than a chronic issue. This is like most of your life. And first we identified that there was an underlying food sensitivity going on. And this was really imbalancing her microbiome. And it's something she had kind of dismissed. She's like, specifically it was dairy. And she was like, I just don't really have a lot of dairy. I have it here and there. And I'm like, but when we actually do a food recall, you're having it every day. And so your microbiome is like, there's a lot of inflammation here going on. A few other things that we adjusted was the timing of her eating and the quality of the food. So again, we did that nutrition foundation. She, like many of the gut health patients I had seen, you get to a point where you're reactive to so many foods, your immune system is falsely flagging all these foods that your diet is so narrow. And she's like, these are the fruits and veggies I eat because it seems like I can tolerate them. So as we started to lower inflammation, we started to add all of these different foods back in. Again, variety of plants is so key. And really we reversed all of her symptoms. And that was like 40 years worth of damage. And so much of it was through routines, regulating her circadian rhythm, quality of her diet, variety of her diet, understanding that there was this one food group that she couldn't digest, removing it, and then really seeing healing.
That is beautiful and such a inspiring story to people who might be dealing with similar things or might not know like where to turn, that you can fix how you're feeling.
Yeah. And I think again, she, it's finding the right person. She had worked with like nutritionists in the past, but I was a gut health dietitian, so I was like, right, if you haven't been asked these questions, like it's not surprising that you haven't fixed the problem. So there were like some definitely red flags in the history of like who she had worked with, and I was like, it just kind of all makes sense that like this has just been such an ongoing problem, and she had been relying on laxatives for decades.
Yeah, I love that with today and doctors that people are looking at the entire picture and they're looking at, it's an ecosystem in a way. And before, in the 90s and early 2000s and like stuff like that, we always, when you and I were growing up, it was always, everything was very compartmentalized in a way. And now it's all coming together, and that it's great because we're learning so much, and it's just such a beautiful, what a time to be alive.
I know. Like, thank gosh, finally, we're starting to embrace a more like integrative medicine approach. Like the issue, like if the flower in the garden dies, you need to check the health of the soil, not just like replanting the flower and hoping it will thrive. Like, we need to look at the bigger picture. Why is the flower not getting nutrients?
I couldn't agree more. And I guess the last question I have for you, do you have any advice for any young people listening who might not know, what is going on, but they don't feel good all the time or anything? Like, do you have any advice?
Yeah. Honestly, don't let it sit. Like, don't put it off for months to years. I see a lot of people who have been like, I've been dealing with this for, a decade. The longer you wait to treat something, the longer it takes you to heal. And I think we think of health in these days as like, I shouldn't pay anything, like insurance should cover everything. The problem is if insurance is covering everything, but you're getting nowhere with a provider that takes insurance, like that does us no good. So I think too, like view paying out of pocket for a program as an investment in your health. If we could reverse a decade worth of symptoms, isn't it worth it just to get your life back? So don't sit on symptoms. Like every single symptom is your body trying to send you a message. Listen to your body. Listen to what it's trying to tell you, because nobody else knows but you. So trust that instinct that you have and don't let it sit. Prioritize your health. It's quite literally all we have. And so, and again, like, don't be afraid to pay out of pocket for things. It's so worth it. I myself have worked with other naturopaths, and we fixed the issue right away. Like we realized, and I didn't get prescribed medication, and I actually was heard. And it's an investment in your health. It's not just throwing money away.
Absolutely. Yeah, the system is a bit different in America. I'm from America, but I live in New Zealand. I've been here since before COVID.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so the system over here is much different, and most insurances will cover dietitian like stuff over here. But yeah, no, I definitely do think that just because your insurance doesn't cover something, if you have the means, because not everybody has the means to be able to afford those things, but if you are able to, take an interest into your health and can do that, I think that that's one of the smartest things you can do for your future, for your children, for your grandchildren, because you're no good if you're not around. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And just like think about what you're spending on too, you know, like certainly like whoever can seek out treatment, you know, you're so lucky, but some of us, I think too, you know, yeah, just make it a priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has been such a pleasure having you, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I could talk about nutrition all day. Thank you.
Let me know what ways you plan on transforming your gut health down in the comments below. Thanks for joining me today, guys, on this episode of Wellness from Scratch. I'm so glad you're here with me today, and I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks, guys.